The servant kneels, not to you, to your shoes. They arrived this morning in a velvet-lined box, and you have been staring at them for the better part of an hour. Narrow, delicate, elevated by nearly 3 inches of curved wood and leather, you wonder quite seriously how anyone is expected to walk in them without falling. Across the room, through the open door, you can hear the rustle of skirts on the polished floor of the gallery outside, and every woman out there already can. Today, if you wish to belong, you must learn. You are 16 years old, and this is the first week your family has ever set foot inside the Palace of Versailles. It is the 1680s, the height of the reign of Louis XIV, and your father, a minor nobleman who has spent 2 decades and most of his fortune buying his way into the king's favor, has finally secured what he wanted. A small apartment inside the palace, a foothold in the most important room in Europe. You did not ask to be here. But you understand, even at 16, that your family's entire future now depends on whether you can convince this room that you belong in it. Before you even reach the gallery, you pass through a corridor lined floor to ceiling with mirrors, hundreds of panes of Venetian glass reflecting candlelight until the whole hallway seems to shimmer. You catch your own reflection walking beside you, over and over, in shoe after shoe after shoe of glass, and you notice, with a small jolt, that everyone else reflected alongside you appears taller than you remember them being at home. It takes you a moment to understand why. It is not an illusion of the mirrors, it is the shoes. Here is the twist the audience never expects. These shoes were never made for women at all. Long before they graced a single Versailles ballroom, heeled footwear began as practical military gear for Persian cavalry, the raised heel hooking securely into a stirrup to keep a rider steady while firing a bow from horseback. European nobles, obsessed with the exotic prestige of Persian horsemen, imported the style in the early 1600s, and by the time it reached the court you are standing in now, it has traveled an enormous distance from a soldier's stirrup to a 16-year-old girl's velvet box. You slide your foot into the shoe for the first time, and immediately your ankle wants to fold sideways. A servant steadies your elbow without being asked. She has clearly done this before, for other terrified girls just like you. You take one step, then another. Your legs are shaking in a way that has nothing to do with the height of the heel, and everything to do with the eyes you can already feel on you the moment you walk through that door. Here is the real conflict, and it is not the one you expected. You are not afraid of falling, you are afraid of being laughed at. In a court built entirely on appearances, a stumble is not a physical accident, it is a public verdict. Every gesture inside this palace is a performance, and you learn this within your first hour. Every smile is a performance. Every bow is timed to the precise rank of the person receiving it. Every gown, every fan, every powdered curl of hair has been arranged to communicate something specific about status, wealth, and favor. And now, every pair of shoes has joined that same silent, exhausting language. Nothing here is accidental. You realize, walking those first unsteady steps across the gallery, that you have just enrolled in a performance you never auditioned for, with rules nobody bothered to explain to you in advance. There is a girl your age at court, Isabelle, the daughter of another recently arrived family, who greets the whole trend with open scorn. "They're ridiculous," she says one evening, loudly enough for 3 tables to hear, refusing to so much as try a pair on. Everyone laughs, but not with her. Within 2 months, Isabelle's invitations to the smaller, more intimate court gatherings quietly stop arriving. Nobody says why, nobody has to. You watch her drift to the edges of every room, still present at court, but no longer really inside it, and you understand, with a chill, exactly what these shoes actually are. They were never optional. They are social currency, and Isabelle just refused to spend it. You think, sometimes, about simply doing what Isabelle did, saying the thing everyone privately feels, and letting the consequences fall where they will. But you have watched what happens to the girl who says it out loud, and you have a father whose entire life's ambition now rests on your ability to be believed by this room. Isabelle had the luxury of a family already secure enough to absorb the cost of her honesty. You do not. So you say nothing, and you put the shoes back on, and you tell yourself the ache in your feet is a small price for everything it is buying your family. Here is the reveal the audience is not expecting yet. These shoes are not beautiful to wear. They are painful. Your feet ache within the first hour of any evening event, the arch forced into an unnatural curve, the narrow toe box crushing your smallest toes together until they go numb, then burn. Women twist ankles regularly on the gallery's polished floors. A lady in waiting 2 apartments down broke her wrist last month catching herself after a fall nobody spoke of again. Dancing, which is supposed to look effortless, leaves you breathless and trembling by the 3rd set. And yet every single woman in this room, including you, will spend the whole evening smiling as though these shoes are the most comfortable thing she has ever worn. Historians of court fashion still marvel at this particular cruelty, an entire culture agreeing, silently and completely, to perform comfort it did not feel. Here is the bigger reveal, the one that changes how you see everything else in this room. Common women, the servants who dress you, the washerwomen, the market sellers outside the palace gates, do not wear heels at all. They cannot afford to, and more importantly, they cannot afford the time. A heel that makes walking difficult and working impossible is not a flaw in this fashion. It is the entire point. If your shoes prove you never have to haul water, scrub floors, or stand at a market stall for 10 hours, your shoes are proving your wealth as effectively as any jewel around your neck. This is not new to fashion, and it will not be the last time it happens. The same logic, historians note, sits behind pale, unblemished skin as proof you never labored outdoors, or the agonizing binding of feet practiced among elite women in Qing dynasty China during roughly this same century, or the rigid corsets that will dominate European fashion for 200 years after you are gone. Discomfort, worn visibly and proudly, has always been one of the clearest ways the wealthy prove they do not need to be comfortable. And then, the force behind all of it finally steps into the room. And every conversation drops half a register. Louis XIV does not simply tolerate heels, he has made them his own signature. The soles of his shoes dyed a vivid, unmistakable red, a color so tightly associated with royal favor that wearing red heels yourself, without explicit permission, could be read as a dangerous act of presumption. Historians still point to his reign as the moment heels stopped being a passing style and became a full engine of court politics. Every nobleman at Versailles suddenly wants heels, taller than his rivals, if he can manage it, and every noblewoman wants them too, not for herself, but for the one man in this palace whose glance decides her family's entire future. That is the moment it actually lands for you. You are not dressing for yourself tonight. You are not even really dressing for the other women watching you, though it feels that way. You are dressing for one man in one room, whose approval or indifference will determine whether your father's decade of quiet, expensive effort was worth anything at all. You wear the heels again the next evening, and the one after that, and within a year you no longer think about the ache in your arch the way you did that first terrifying hour. It becomes simply what your feet feel like after dark. There is one evening, crossing the gravel path between the gallery and the gardens after a sudden rain, when your heel catches in the softened mud and snaps clean off beneath you, pitching you forward into a stumble you barely catch with a hand against a hedge. For one panicked second you are certain the whole court has seen. A young courtier nearby simply looks away, pretending not to notice, and you understand, gratefully, that this too is part of the performance, the elegant refusal to acknowledge anyone else's fall, because every person in this garden knows their own is only one wet cobblestone away. You learn to dance in the heels, to curtsy in them, to cross a marble floor at a pace that looks effortless and costs you everything not to show. You watch new girls arrive each season, wide-eyed in exactly the way you once were, and you find yourself, without quite meaning to, offering the same steadying hand a servant once offered you. Years later, long after Versailles and its politics have receded into memory, your own daughter finds an old wooden chest in your bedchamber and pulls out a pair of your court shoes, worn soft with age, the once brilliant color faded to a dull rose. She laughs, turning one over in her hands. "Did women really wear these?" she asks, delighted by how impractical they look from the safe distance of a different decade. You smile and you let her laugh. You do not tell her that you wore them, night after night, for years, not because they were beautiful, and certainly not because they were comfortable, but because you were terrified of what would happen to your family if you did not. Fashion has never really been about fabric or leather or the particular curve of a wooden heel. It has always been about belonging, about who gets to walk into a room and be believed, and who gets quietly, silently, uninvited from the next one. Louis XIV's red heels are remembered today as an eccentric detail of a vanished court. They rarely get remembered as what they actually were, a test that an entire generation of women, including you, decided was safer to pass than to question.